Yes, it looks like we're up on almost on everything. So let us get started. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. It's Sunday. It's 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That means we are doing our live stream where we speak with you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, on all the social media that will allow us, all the internet overlords seem to be allowing us to get through to you. And we look forward to hearing your comments. Please don't hesitate to type in and to have comments with us. Hello, and we already have a couple people speaking. Hello, Juan. And you can also call into the program at 607-242-1582. We look forward to hearing everything that you have to say. We're going to be talking about a lot of things today. If this is the first time you're on the program, we do long-form political commentary. We cover everything as best as we can and have been doing so for 15 years. There's a lot that's going on since the beginning of this year. There's so much happening, and there are so many problems. It's going to be crazy. And by the way, Juan, thank you. I do like this tie. It's one of my favorite ties. Let me start off with something really simple. First, I want to say thank you again to Ron and Mary. They helped to provide us. They made a donation to the program, and that allows us to have continuous power for our cameras so that we don't have to stop and change batteries. So we do want to thank them, and we appreciate that donation. We also want to put out a quick message to one of our friends on the program, John and Pal. Yeah, it kind of tells you where it is, and just to give you a 1 month here. And this is somewhat of an inside kind of thing, but I told you. Anyway, that being said, let's go on. Let's start with New York State. I mean, I know it's Valentine's Day, and everyone's talking about the love they have for this person, that person, everyone. And I hope everyone is having a lovely day, that someone who loves you, whether it's a friend, family member, whether it's a significant other, I hope that you're having a day with them and it's filled with love and joy. But there's some people in this world that are not, which is Governor Cuomo, Joe Biden, President Trump. There's a lot of people who are not getting a lot of love right now. And I see that Juan mentions that New York is a dumpster fire, and you're right. Hello, Teresa. It's good to see you. And you know what? Governor Cuomo really doesn't deserve a whole lot of love. Let's be honest. He really, really doesn't. Let's take a look at this. You know, on February 11th on Facebook, we left this comment. By the way, at the end of the program, you'll see links to everything that we're speaking about so that you can read it for yourself and make your own decision about any of the things we're commenting on. But we spoke about the cover-up, a massive cover-up. And in case you didn't if you haven't heard about it, hello, Ron. Good afternoon to you as well. For those who haven't heard about it, throughout the COVID-19 crisis, there has been a scandal. There have been nursing home deaths throughout the entire nation. Hello, Kelly. Where we've seen massive deaths in every state. In particular, there's New York, Michigan, California seem to be leading the rest of the nation. And in each of those states, there is no true information about how many people have died in nursing homes as a result of the governors sending sick COVID-19 patients into nursing homes. This is at the same time that those same states had the medical facilities available to allow people to go. As an example, in New York State, we had the Javits Center turned into a hospital, a makeshift hospital, and we had the USS Comfort that was sent in with 300 hospital beds. It's a naval medical ship. It was put into New York Harbor for the overflow of the hospitals and the Javits Center to take care of people who have been inflicted with COVID-19. That hospital ship never was used. the Javits Center was almost entirely empty. Instead of taking those COVID-19 patients and bringing them to these facilities, Governor Cuomo instead decided to send them to nursing homes, a closed system that caused deaths. Now, we initially thought that number was somewhere around 6,500, according to the Cuomo administration. But as the AP, the Associated Press, and other news agencies looked into this, there was a suspicion that there were thousands upon thousands of more deaths than were being reported. We heard from the Cuomo administration that just wasn't true, although they wouldn't provide any information about this policy and its result. As it turns out, we have now come to find out that they lied. A.G. James, New York State Attorney General James, stated that no, in fact, the number is at least double what we have been told, of roughly 13,000, possibly 15,000 individuals that were killed because of the COVID-19 policy. That's a fact. There is no question about that. There is no debate about that. Now, here's the thing. Governor Cuomo said, well, that's just a bad thing. They died. And that's that. They're dead, and who cares? Those are literally his words. Who cares? We then find out that one of his secretary, Melissa DeRosa, admits in a conversation with only Democrats, not to the public, that if this was a purposive act. It wasn't just the ineptitude of the New York State government. This was a purposive plan by Governor Cuomo and his administration to hide from the public the fact that his bad policy killed somewhere around 13,000, possibly 15,000 New York citizens that did not need to die. This was also left out of his book that he wrote about his great leadership of COVID-19. This is a crime, straight up. There is no question about this. It violates Public Officer Law Section 74-8 H, as well as several other laws, including lying to the Department of Justice, who were doing an investigation on these numbers. This should be pretty straightforward, right? Yes, Ron, it was 15,000. They were afraid of what Trump would throw at them. That's the answer that came from Melissa DeRosa, that they were afraid of the political backlash for having to admit that the COVID-19 policy that was enacted by New York State had failed, causing people to die. And rather than to feed into a bad news cycle, which was normally 3 days, maybe it'd be a week, maybe a month. That's your news cycle nowadays, because the news media is constantly moving on to the next thing, especially if it involves Democrats and Democratic leadership. So rather than go through that and possibly impact negatively the Cuomo administration's re-election campaign, no, what they decided is we're just going to lie to the American public. We're going to lie to the people that we killed and their families. That's a crime. That is a crime. It is absolutely a definition of corruption. There is no question on this. Now, here's the thing about what I wrote on, yes, I agree with you, Teresa. He needs to go to jail. There is no question on that. But here's what I wrote on February 11th, after the New York Post had announced that Melissa DeRosa told Democrats, a select group of Democratic elected officials, that they purposefully lied to the American people and committed acts of corruption. And the elected officials said nothing. They had nothing to say about this. They didn't have a complaint. They didn't have a question. They didn't have a denouncement. They didn't denounce these acts. They didn't deride this crime. They just, oh, okay, that's why you did it. We understand. Orange man bad. Don't worry about it. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? This is an active crime. People died. So then I had to write this letter, because when our elected officials have done something that is so outrageous that it makes no sense and is criminal, we need to tell them, our representatives, the people we elected who are obligated by oath and by position to do what we say. I wrote to 9 members of the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate. And that included Democrats as well as Republicans, and demanded that they denounce what Governor Cuomo had done and to seek his resignation, to remove him from office and to start criminal proceedings. And I asked each and every one of those 9 members, and this is the part that I want you to emphasize here, this should not be a matter of political preferences or party affiliation. If there is a reason that you would not seek Governor Cuomo's removal as it is applicable by law, then as a constituent and a resident of New York State, I ask you for the reason. That should be very simple. And if they can't give us a reason, then they should go forward and do their job, which is to punish Governor Cuomo. To this day, today is now the 14th of February, I have not received a single response from any member of New York State Assembly or the New York State Senate, whether from Democrats or from Republicans, although 3 of the members of the New York State Assembly that we did reach out to have come out. They were part of the 10 members of New York State Assembly that have denounced what Cuomo has done, although they didn't ask for his resignation nor to seek criminal charges. Do you know how many people are in the New York State Assembly? How many people are in the New York State Senate? Hundreds. And almost all of them are Democrats. Overwhelmingly, they are Democrats. What is going on with our government that we cannot see this blatant example of corruption and it's being excused? What are we seeing instead? The Cuomo administration, rather than apologizing, rather than taking accountability, rather than, they may be writing a new book about it, but instead what they decided to do is say, hey, here's some distracting news. We have increased the amount of time that bars and restaurants are allowed to be open. We're increasing it by 1 hour. This came out literally a day after the New York Post has proven without question or doubt that the Cuomo administration is corrupt and has lied to the people and committed crimes. Their answer is, hey, you can open up bars for an extra hour. John Solak mentions, don't let him fool you. New York State Senator Fred Akshar was all in on the COVID lockdown shutdown. He hasn't responded to me. I can't say he is or isn't. He hasn't responded. I do know he has said that he wants to remove Governor Cuomo's emergency powers that created the problem in the first place by allowing Governor Cuomo to decide by himself that he should kill 15,000 New York City residents, and has given him the power to say that COVID is active after 10 o'clock, and therefore you can't be in a restaurant or a bar. And now, as a distraction to that, he says the bars can be open an extra hour. Where is this? Where is the science behind this? We're told that it's all about science. That's why we had to close businesses at 10 o'clock instead of later. Now we get to open them to 11. Where's the science that tells me or anyone that it's safer, that COVID is not active until 11 o'clock at night? It doesn't make any sense. But if we understand it for the political action it is, which is a distraction from the fact that corruption is ongoing in New York State, well, then we can do that. That's what it's there for. Now, Bone Hunter appears to say blatant example of corruption as Trump walks. I'm going to get into the acquittal, which is not a matter of corruption, unless we're talking about the way that this whole impeachment was, the process, the reasoning, and the vote. That was corrupt. But if you're talking, Again, one has nothing to do with the other. Let's not go into this orange man bad conversation when we're talking about the actual crime of Governor Cuomo. See, that's the distraction that we hear sometimes from the left. Wait a minute, stop talking about that. Let's talk about the bars being open for an extra hour. Let's talk about orange man bad. No, we're talking about the corruption of New York State that has also been followed. That example is why we see Governor Newsom in California and Governor Whitmer in Michigan have done the same exact thing. They followed the lead, literally followed the lead of Governor Cuomo and killed the American citizens and then covered it up and not allow anyone to see the actual data. So this is not just a crime, it's a crime that's been repeated. And we need to stop that. To prevent that from happening again in the future, we need to punish these people. And there is no distraction that takes away from that. None. Now, Teresa mentions Axar voted yes to give Cuomo the emergency powers. And I disagree with every single person, Republican or Democrat, and there were Republicans that were involved in this in New York State that gave emergency powers, unlimited power. The emperor of the Star Wars equivalent of Cuomo gave them unlimited powers that make no sense and are far just too much power. It's overreaching. So I am upset with State Senator Akshar, who I know, someone who I've known for several years now, since he got the office. And I'm not saying this about him personally. I am attacking his position politically. He was wrong to give the emergency powers. He's right to say we need to remove that. We need to hear the Democrats say the same thing, like Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo, who also received that letter I showed you from Facebook, received it, has yet to comment on it, has yet to denounce the actions of Governor Cuomo. This is the problem in our nation right now. This is a problem. We are watching an overreach of power, yes, at the county level, at the state level, at every level. And we're seeing this not in just one nation, one section of the nation, not one state. We're seeing this throughout the entire country. Like I said, this is happening in Michigan. This is happening in California. Those are just two states that I personally follow. And I am sure that if we looked at many other states, we would see a similar process in multiple states throughout this nation. What's going on, folks? We need to speak up. We need to hold these people accountable. And in terms of the COVID, talking about what's going on with this suddenly, we're open an extra hour, it's too late. We see that even as we speak on February 13th, it's already been announced, New Yorkers are fleeing. And they're going to Palm Beach, and businesses are going along with them. New York State has already lost 25% of its business, minimally. At least 25% of the small businesses across the state have gone. New York City is empty. They are going to other places. Why? Because as Governor Cuomo gives us an extra hour, Palm Beach is open. There are cities and states that are open to the public right now and have lower or the same death totals that we have here in New York State, that have lower COVID rates than New York State. What they have done did not work because the policy is being created not by the science, but by some madman who has way too much power, who has been abusing his power and saying, well, it's all about the science, except there is no science that tells me the difference between one being closed at 10 o'clock versus 11 o'clock. If it's 11 o'clock, then it always should be 11 o'clock. There is no difference in the 1 hour. There is no science on that. And if there were any science on it, he would have provided it to the public. He would have said, here's the scientific proof. There isn't any. So this is merely politicking, and that is a problem. Let me see what everyone else has to say about this. And this is something that for those who are in Michigan, those who are in Great Britain, Germany, our fans and friends in Canada and Peru and Mexico and across the world, please do chime in with how it's happening in your nation. Are you seeing the same kind of government overreach? Are you seeing government officials hiding the fact that they have killed people with this false science logic that they are using that is actually harming more than it is helping? This is a big question. John Solak mentions that Governor Cuomo and Broome County Executive Jason Garnar partners in death. I am still upset with County Executive Jason Garnar, who also I do know and have known for many years, who is a Democrat. And I am still upset with him with his overreach of the government, saying that people should be in solitary confinement every other day, something that he has no power to do and yet tried to enact. So, yeah, he has problems too. And he also, like many county executives, have said nothing because they are Democrats talking about another Democrat, and this is about politics, which means all of COVID is about politics, not about the safety of the public or living by the rule of law. Because if it was, Governor Cuomo would be under indictment right now. And if I am wrong about that, please tell me how I misunderstand that, because if it isn't about politics, please explain to me how we can have this blatant violation of law and the public trust and the murder of people. How is it not? And tell me how it's not the same in California or Michigan and many other states. I really want to understand that. Bone Thunder says, it's not Orange Man bad anymore. It's about how every Republican is a spineless turd that is more concerned with party affiliation than justice. But you can have Cuomo, who cares about a governor. Well, governors are absolutely powerful to start off with, Bone Hunter. Let's start with the fact that governors have massive power, both by the 10th Amendment of the United States and also by their own actions. And they affect millions of people. Yes, maybe they don't affect the entire 330 million people of the nation all at once, but New York State alone has 20 million people. That's more than some countries have. Many countries don't have that many people. So when you're saying, who cares? Well, I think everyone who's related to or a friend of the 15,000 people that died, I think they care. So, yeah, I think people care, and someone gives an S about it. But let's go into this. And I'm going to get to your comment because I take offense, and I think 74 million other Americans take offense at being called spineless, especially for something that is, again, a purely political act. So, Bone Hunter, your story is, oh, you don't like what happened, so people are bad because you don't agree. Well, that's the same thing with Cuomo. Cuomo saying, I'm a Democrat, so Republicans are bad for telling me that I broke the law. That's stupid. That has nothing to do with the fact. And I'm not saying you are stupid. I'm saying that logic is. It makes no sense. It is a distraction. It is a way to try and justify a horrific action that is expressly illegal. You may disagree with me on that, and that is fine. This is my conclusion based on the fact. The fact is a crime has been committed. It is an act of corruption, deception. It is a violation of public trust. These are facts. We know this has happened. That is a fact. The next step that is supposed to happen in our system is that someone is supposed to be tried and punished if they are guilty. Since we have admission of the crime, I think the process is pretty straightforward. So we should be looking at the punishment, period. John Solak mentions that local grand jury needs to be impaneled to investigate all COVID-19 death records. I would love to see that. And John, I agree with you. But much like the election irregularities, we're not going to see that. We're not going to see any investigation come forward because we see that Democrats control most of the major media, and most of the major media are willing to downplay what is going on. They're willing to obfuscate this. The media, the AP started asking questions about the number of people who died back in August of 2020. The first questions about whether or not nursing home deaths were elevated or underreported first started coming out in May of 2020. And we saw how much news in the media about it. The answer was Governor Cuomo had a daily briefing and said, well, no, that didn't happen. Don't worry about it. And the news media said, okay. So I have no confidence that there would be anyone's going to impanel a grand jury, because they seem more unsatisfied to say, oh, well, he said he's sorry. Oh, well, he told us they died. Who cared? Literally. I've never heard that from any other. Imagine any other politician. Let's look at any Republican. I mean, we heard it from Hillary Clinton, so I guess there is a precedent for this. What does it matter? It matters. It matters a lot. And perhaps if we had punished Hillary Clinton, as was due for her position, for failing to support and take care of American citizens overseas, we would have enough of a reason to cause Governor Cuomo to not have done what he did, to not hide from the fact. It's one thing to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a news update here. Governor Cuomo, Joe Biden wants to restrict gun ownership. I'm going to handle that in a second. But, if we had consequences that were evenly applied to Republicans and Democrats leadership, then perhaps we wouldn't have all the problems we have right now. No, the left hates Cuomo too. Really? It doesn't seem like it. Because that's not what we're seeing in the news media. That's not what we're seeing consistently in each election. That's not in the donations the left makes to Cuomo from around the nation. So, Bun Hunter, when you say that the left hates Cuomo, please tell me, other than when he is caught red-handed, hand in the cookie jar, tell me when the left hates him. Because they were supporting him throughout the entire time that he lied to the American people. That's not what I call hate. That's what I call support. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the meaning of support. Maybe I misunderstand the definition of hate. Roy mentions, how does Cuomo keep getting reelected then? Exactly. If the left hates him so much, and I know that in the last election, a week before the election, Governor Cuomo was polling 52% of New York State did not approve of his handling of anything. And then he won by 66%. I don't understand the state. Now, Bone Hunter, you seem to have a hard-on for one of the other things we want to talk about today, which is the acquittal. President Trump's acquittal. Let's start off with the facts on that. Okay, you want to get into it? Let's get into it. Because it was actually something else I wanted to address. And what we can see, and here it is, evidence of the planned attack on the Capitol undercuts the indictment. Let's deal with this from the beginning. Nancy Pelosi said there were domestic terrorists and justice must prevail, but they do not appear out of a vacuum. They were sent here by the president with words such as fight like hell. Words matter, truth matters, accountability matters. Are you serious? An elected official said, fight like hell. An elected official said, let your voices be heard. They called for a protest. This is insightful. Are you kidding me? After the entire second half of 2020, you're going to tell me that saying fight like hell is really? When Maxine Waters has told people to go out and actively persecute individuals in their private lives, you mean to tell me that that is some kind of insightful terrorizing? You know what? Let's look at this. What about Schumer? How about when Chuck Schumer was speaking about the Supreme Court on the steps of the Supreme Court, and he told the justices, that they have released a whirlwind and will pay the price, and you will know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. That is rather insightful. That is something that sounds rather violent and dangerous. That came from Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate currently for New York State, the senator for New York State, and a major Democrat on national news media, and was so bad that the chief of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice John Roberts, made a rare statement to address his political comment, saying that justices know that criticism comes with the territory, but threatening statements. He identifies what Chuck Schumer said as a directly threatening statement, not something that you would interpret, not something that's questionable, not like fight like hell, but actually said, when he said that you will pay the price. You will not know what hit you if you go forward with decisions that Chuck Schumer did not like. This is a threatening statement that the Supreme Court Chief Justice identified. That he said that these statements against the highest levels of the government are not only inappropriate, they are dangerous. Where were you, Bone Hunter, telling us that we need to impeach Chuck Schumer for inciting violence? Where were you and others? And I don't mean to isolate you, Bone Hunter, but I want to make sure it's very clear that we have heard many politicians say a great deal of things, several of them, like Maxine Waters, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, with her whole resistance movement. People like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have made statements that were unpleasant, that may have been considered by many people to be insightful, for being violent or supporting violence, like the many members who supported BLM and Antifa actions, or denied that they existed, like Jerry Nadler and Joe Biden. And when we see these people do this, I didn't hear a word about, well, that's just violent. That's insightful. That's dividing our nation. That's helped support the billions upon billions of dollars of damage in cities across this entire nation. I didn't hear a word about, oh, well, we need to impeach those individuals. And you're going to tell me that someone who said, peacefully protest and let your voice be heard, that is a problem for you? That you think that was equivalent to insurrection? Something that was planned well beforehand, as we have learned from the FBI, as they have come out and proven, or are in the process of, their investigation shows that they had foreknowledge that there were individuals that had nothing to do with President Trump that were planning this event while he was saying, be peaceful, go home, that these individuals, some of them members of Antifa, and you're going to tell me that that's insurrection? That makes no sense. Bone Hunter says, you're going to ignore how much power a president has. No, I'm not. I'm addressing it very directly. So saying fight like hell isn't actually a notion. You know how many people have said you should fight like hell? I'd like to see, please, take a look at every single elected official, look at every candidate for any office, local to federal, that hasn't said fight like hell or the equivalent of it. Some of them have said so incredibly passionately. Hell, we've heard people who have mimicked and said what Antifa and BLM have said, that they want to burn it down if you don't do what they say. And literally burn it down. And you want to tell me that is less than someone saying fight like hell? That's not spineless, it's realistic. I'm holding people to the same level, Bone Hunter, and that's the key. We have to hold this all accountable to the same level. Either they are all completely complicit in inciting violence, or none of them are. And we've been told from the left that none of the ones on the left are. Therefore, you can't say that on the right, because fight like hell, we've been saying that for decades. I don't know a single politician who hasn't said something like that. And to tell me that just because this guy said it, it means something different than when that woman said it, no. Now you're picking and choosing. That's your personal bias because of your personal viewpoint. You're taking it that way. That doesn't mean it suddenly means that, or that it's suddenly different than when everyone else said it beforehand. Don't change the rules in the middle of it because it suits your purpose. That's not the American system. Besides the fact that, and by the way, let's start off with the impeachment is not valid because of the Constitution, Article 2, I believe Section 4, that an impeachment is expressly for the president is for the purpose of removal of that president. That is the purpose of the impeachment. President Trump is not president. But let's go even further. Let's go beyond that. You want to say that this is supposed to be an impeachment. An impeachment against the president is ruled over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. This impeachment process that went through did not. Supreme Court Justice John Roberts refused to attend and to be involved with the impeachment process. And it is expressly in the Constitution that when a president is impeached or a vice president, that the Supreme Court Chief Justice preside. He did not, which invalidates it. Let's go even further. We had a member of the jury as the judge in this impeachment proceeding. That is a kangaroo court. That is expressly forbidden in the United States. You do not have judges that actually sit as jurors in any of the trials we have in any kind of judicial legal event. So again, on multiple levels, this isn't valid. The fact that we saw, and finally, and let's be very clear here, 74 million people voted for President Trump. There are, at this moment, 40% of Americans that disagree with the election results. We've been talking about this, the election irregularities, and the questions that the American people have, and the polling to this day, and this one's from December 4th, but we've been talking about this for months, that Americans do not agree with what has happened. So when we saw the 43 members of the Senate that voted against impeachment, that is in fact what the public wants. And again, like going back with Governor Cuomo, these elected officials are representatives. They do what the public wants them to do. Well over 40% of America did not agree with the Democrats about their opinion of President Trump. When you are reacting to 40% and you're doing what they tell you to do, that means your vote goes against impeachment, as some 40% of America does not want to see impeachment of President Trump, and therefore the vote is valid. So again, Bone Hunter, you can call me spineless all you want. It's a word. It doesn't hurt me. You're not going to change my life by making personal attacks against me. I'm not making personal attacks against you. The only reason why you're making a personal attack, as you have repeatedly called me spineless and soulless, is because you have no argument for the arguments I am making. You have no comeback. I have given you 4 different ways that I believe the acquittal is accurate. Now, if you're going to tell me there is a reason why that acquittal isn't accurate, I can hear that. But if you're going to just malign me personally, that's meaningless. That's a character assassination. That is meant to make me emotional and try and attack me on a personal level because you have nothing to say, which invalidates and ruins your argument. There may be people who believe that there should have been an impeachment, and you, Bone Hunter, are doing them a disjustice by saying, oh, let's make it about a personal attack. Mavis had mentioned that Democrats, and again, I don't want to go into name calling, It's the president. It does mean something. It's the Speaker of the House. It means something. The governor of New York. It means something. It means something when every elected official says something. That doesn't mean that one is suddenly, if the governor says it, well, it's not as important as when the president sends it. No, they're still in charge of millions of people. Yeah, it's still important. Izzy mentions that hang on, and I want to go back here. Over 30 people dead and the riots. Mavis mentions that the riots from over the summer of 2020 resulted in over 30 people dead and over $2 billion in damage. Actually, $2 billion in damage is one city. That's Minneapolis by itself. It is actually tens of billions of dollars of damage throughout the entire nation, and they don't care. Izzy mentions the 43 senators who voted to acquit represent only about 125 million people. Yes, they represent, and there were 74 million people who voted against Joe Biden. So if they're representing, each senator represents somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it's 3 million people apiece. And so, yeah, that's more than enough. So what's the problem? You go on to say that 57 senators who voted to convict him represent about 202 million. And you need 67%. 67% of the nation do not. And by the way, your numbers are wrong, because there's, according to what you're saying, there's 327 million Americans. There's actually 330. But that's including every child. You're including the 60, 70 million people that are between the age of just born and those who are 17 that can't vote, that have no voice in that. Your numbers are off. You're using the wrong numbers, Izzy. You're making an assumption that isn't correct. So your logic is flawed. So there you go. Bone Hunter goes back to personal attacks because he has no other answer. Wild Man, you're a smart man. Okay. Thank you for that, Wild Man. Mavis says, yeah, your math is off. It's massively off. Wild Man mentions that it's a fact that Democrats are communists. Not, Wild Man, let me correct that in part. Not all Democrats are communists. The progressives are. The Democratic Socialists are. There's an entire wing of the Democratic Party, a very vocal wing and a very small splinter of the Democratic Party. Right now, we're watching the Democratic Party is splintered into the Socialists, the Progressives, and then there's the mainstream Democrats. That's your neighbor. That's your person down the block. Rank and file Americans. They aren't represented very well by the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is represented by the AOC, Rashida Tlaib, the Presley, that whole wing, who are very, very loud, but they're very few numbers. And that's the problem. And they are the communists, the socialists, and they're very upfront about it. Now, Bone Hunter keeps saying, you're not listening. Why should I listen to you call me spineless and soulless? Why should I care? See, that's the problem when you use name calling. You can't go and say, you're evil, you're just evil, evil, evil. And then you're going to turn around and say, but you're not listening to me. Well, why should I? You haven't said anything. You have said nothing of substance. You have nothing of value. You have nothing of credibility to say. You have invalidated your whole argument when you said that this is about me having no soul or being sent. By the way, many people, if I happen to be a Democrat and you said that, you would be out, you'd be banned instantly because you're saying something. To call a black man, a black Latin man, soulless, well, that's absolutely racist. That's the standard that we are at in America today. Not my standard. That's the standard in America today. That if you're saying something like that against a man or someone who's a person of color or a woman, then you have different groups, gradings on this. But I can tell you this, in terms of a debate, if you say something like you are spineless and soulless, then everything you say after that is discredited. You have made it clear that this is a personal matter from you, that your personal viewpoint is skewed and biased, and that you have no argument to make about the facts, so therefore nothing you say is credible after that point. That's just debate 101. You weren't taught that in high school. I'm teaching it to you now. So if you have something actually intelligent to say, it's a little too late. But I've already given 4 key examples and clear points about why I believe the acquittal is fair and accurate. You don't like it, I don't care. I'm not talking about whether you like it or not. I didn't ask you if you like it. I'm telling you that's what it is, and I'm telling you what the justification is. You don't have to like that. I don't like that I can't drive over 65 miles an hour, but that's the law. That is a fact. It has nothing to do with whether I like it or not. I don't like not being a millionaire. That doesn't give me the right to go out and rob a bank. Whether you like something or not has nothing to do with what it is. So let's keep going. Enrique Tarrio. Enrique Tarrio, which I would love if this is actually from the Proud Boys. Because if it is, I want to do an interview with him. But Enrico mentions, you're getting worked up. Well, yes, and you're right. And I don't mean to be emotional here. I do believe in passion, and I am passionate, but I don't want to be emotional. And I want to make that difference. This is about the passion, not the emotion. Because I don't have an emotional feeling for Bone Hunter or for those who attack me personally. It's meaningless to me. I don't know them. I will correct them, but I really have no emotion for them because I don't know them. They're meaningless to me. You know, it's a bunch of words on the screen. I don't know them personally, so it's not a personal thing. But they want to, but that doesn't mean that we don't get emotional from time to time. So yes, that's correct. By the way, the vote, for those who are not aware, the vote numbers, just to be clear on that, were 57 to 43. We actually called that. Where is that? Oh, I forgot. It was in just a few weeks ago, on January 26th. We actually had the video, the prediction video, and we actually called it 57 to 43. It was that predictable, the entire process. It was that clear from that day, exactly what was going to happen, exactly how it was going to fall in line. From January 26th, we had that video. And by the way, when I say that most people in the that there are people who don't agree, here it is, February 12th, from Rasmussen Reports. Most GOP voters still don't think Biden was elected fairly. There are still questions. The current poll finds that 57% of likely U.S. voters say Biden won. That means that out of that, 43% don't think that. 43%. 43% of people, not just Republicans, but Democrats as well. That's a pretty strong statement there. There is a problem, and the problem is emanating from the fact that we have not done. The whole problem with this, what happened on January 6th, isn't about Trump. It's about the fact that we haven't resolved the questions that still linger about the election irregularities. There are questions. We have yet to investigate those questions. We have seen that as a result of the election, there is a national change to the way elections will be done going forward. They're going to have ballots now. That is now a national rule, a regulation that every state has to follow because there were problems with this election. So we know problems exist. That's why the National Election Board has changed the rules. But at the same time, we're told this is the most secure and perfect election that has ever existed. You can't have both. You can't say we need to change the rules for everyone and every election going forward, but the election we're doing it as a result of was perfectly fine. You can't say, like Anthony Brindisi did, and Anthony Brindisi made the claim that there was election irregularities, that the Dominion system voting machines did not work, and they took votes away from him to give to the Republican, the only Democrat in the United States that has made that claim in 2020. And he, a Democrat, former congressman, very former congressman, has made that claim. I'm going with the Democrat here and saying there were election irregularities, probably not what he thinks they were, but that's the problem. We aren't investigating that. No one is checking that out. And that is the underlying problem. When you have this problem that you say, I see a problem, and you're having someone tell you, well, it doesn't matter, we're not going to even address the question you're raising, then yeah, those people are going to have some problems with anything else you do thereafter. They're going to have more and more frustration. That's the reason why we had January 6th, because of the frustration, not because of the person, but because of the system itself falling apart. That shouldn't be that hard to find. That shouldn't be that hard to agree on. We have a problem. Our elections are not trusted by the majority of American citizens. We don't trust the process we just went through. And until we resolve that, that problem doesn't go away. I don't care who got elected or who didn't. If we don't trust our elections, we don't trust our government. If we don't trust our government, we don't trust the rules and regulations they put in place, which means we create more and more anarchy. And that leads to riots, like we saw in Washington, D.C. How does that logic not make sense? That's what we need to be talking about more. We need to restore our faith and confidence in our government. Part of that would be putting in term limits, a personal thought of mine, but also it would be, let's do an investigation and get a result. People may not like that result, but at least then we have confidence in what we were told. What is the result? And I mean, think about it. That's Governor Cuomo again. That's bringing us right back to Governor Cuomo, where we had a situation where Governor Cuomo told us, well, 6,000 people died. He lied. It's 15,000 people died. We know that this is the case. It's the same thing with the election. We don't trust Governor Cuomo for the same reason we don't trust the election results. There's a problem, and we don't believe you. And you need to give us the data. And in the case of Governor Cuomo, when we got the data, we found out he is corrupt and he is criminal. Now we can regain confidence in our government if our elected officials, now that we know that there is corruption and there is crime, now they have to act on that according to the law, and that will restore our confidence in New York State government, as well as similar things happening right now in Michigan and in California. You don't have trust just because someone says, trust me, I said so. Not with an elected official. Not when we have data that says, you're wrong, you're lying. It's absolutely not the same thing. Is this hard to understand? Am I not making this very clear? Because if I'm not, that's my fault, and I will try and make my point more clear. And if my data that I am using to make these examples, to make these conclusions, if you don't agree with the sources, I will show you other sources. If you don't agree with with what those sources are saying, that's a different thing. But I think I'm being very, very clear. But I'm not going to focus on that because I see Bone Hunter has a very clear objective here: to incite emotions and to try and get an outcome. We're supposed to agree because he says, well, you're soulless if you don't agree. You're just bad people if you don't agree. That, oh, it has to be the way I think it is or else. That's not how America works at all, ever. You know, and that's why we hear things like from Joe Biden right now, as we see the announcement that came out today, that his stance on, as reported by NPR, that we must be ever vigilant that violence and extremism has no place in America. And yet, that's not the case, because we have seen violence and extremism supported by Joe Biden, by Kamala Harris, when they decided to bail out protesters in BLM for actually going out and committing arsons, committing murders, destroying property, destroying people's lives. So he's two-faced. He's not being honest. And that makes people less confident in our government. It makes the system break down. When you tell us something and we know for a fact that you are doing the exact opposite, that doesn't make people more confident. It doesn't make America better. So there's, and Bone Hunter right now has, I understand, he wants to make his point. He wants to be right. He wants to have his feelings validated. And that's fine. Lots of people want to validate their feelings. It doesn't matter though, because you can want that feeling. It doesn't mean it's right. You're perfectly allowed to have whatever feelings you want. You can feel however you want about it. The far left can feel like however they want to feel. That doesn't mean they're right. You know, I've had members of BLM tell me that I'm not black. I've had members of Antifa tell me that they think, like Bone Hunter, that I'm soulless and evil. Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. Just because you shout it at the top of your lungs, you get on the news programs and say it, doesn't mean it's real. You know what? If you wanted to get on, and members of BLM have tried to get on to various news media and say, hey, Mike's not black, and yet I am. You know, that's all you have to do. But moving on. And it seems that at least one of the internet overlords don't like us talking about this. So they're delaying the feed on at least one of the channels. I would presume it's going to be Facebook. It could be Twitter. But let's go forward. Because there's more problems going on in our government than just the impeachment. Because the impeachment, the fact that it existed, is a problem. But it's hidden away other problems that are more intrinsic and I think more pervasive that's going on right now. Because we have the Biden administration that is actively just lying to the public. Now, let me explain what I mean. It was, according to Today and Video, Joe Biden on January 20th made a speech to America. And in that speech, at the time on January 20th, he said, quote, "But I am not joking when I say this. If you are ever working with me and I hear you treat another colleague with disrespect, talk down to someone, I promise you I will fire you on the spot. On the spot. No ifs, ands, or buts. Everybody is entitled to be treated with decency and dignity. That's been missing in a big way for the last 4 years." That's what he had to say. Okay. And then the Biden administration has one of their aides, Press Secretary T.J. Ducklo, actively insult and attack a reporter for doing their job and reporting that he had an undisclosed relationship with another reporter from Axios, a far left-leaning news reporting agency that he did not disclose to the public. This is a problem. This is a bias in our media. This is undue influence from the White House onto the news media that impacts the way the rest of the public is getting their information. In many places, it's called propaganda. And this gentleman said that his response was to attack this woman for being a woman and to try and destroy her life, to threaten her livelihood and her ability to do her job and to live her life, that he was going to politically and professionally harm her, as well as other essentially sexist slurs. You would expect that Joe Biden said, if you do that, you are gone. You are fired instantly. There is no question about that. What was the answer from the Biden administration? Well, what happened is it was not clear why Ducklo, he got suspended, as reported by CNN. White House deputy suspends the press secretary for 1 week for threatening a reporter about a story on him. They suspended him for a week. It was not clear why Ducklo had only been suspended on Friday when the Vanity Fair story published, given that Psaki and the White House had been aware of Ducklo's conduct for weeks. Weeks. Can you imagine that? The Biden administration that said we are going to be treating everyone with dignity and decency decides that when their personnel do not treat the American public and the press representing the American public, when they don't treat them with decency and dignity, they instead say, oh, well, that's okay. And literally, if the story had not come out, if Vanity Fair did not publish their article showing that this actually happened, that there was this relationship, which is a violation, that is a breach of ethics, that this was a problem in the Biden administration, if they didn't publish that, none of this would come out. The Biden administration was perfectly fine not saying another word to let this happen. In fact, what did wind up happening is TJ Ducklo wound up resigning. That happened yesterday. Late yesterday, he resigned at 10, as being reported at about 10:30 last night. He wasn't fired. And again, what did Biden say? You will be immediately, where is it? I promise I will fire you on the spot. On the spot. No ifs, ands, or buts. And this guy, he got a suspension and then wound up resigning, falling on his sword to protect the Biden administration. That just doesn't make it. Yes, Philip, I know he resigned. No, it's not a nothing story. It's not a nothing story because that's not what we were told. That's not what we were promised. That doesn't resolve the underlying problem. The underlying problem that we should be looking at here is the Biden administration is willing to not to live by the very rules they established. Phil, they said there is a standard that we are going to live by, and they expressly want the rest of America to follow the example that they are setting. They then turned around and broke those rules for themselves, for their benefit. They didn't fire him. They suspended him. And they weren't even going to tell you it happened, even though they knew it happened. They weren't even going to suspend him until they got caught. Which brings me back to, again, what did we see with what happened with Governor Cuomo? He wasn't, until he got caught, he wasn't ever going to tell the truth. He wasn't ever going to tell the truth. How is that different than with what happened with Duckworth? Until they got caught, they weren't even going to suspend him, even though they promised us that they would fire someone who did what he did. And instead of that, he wound up resigning. There's a different set of rules that are going on. Now, I want to get back to some comments because there's one by Izzy that I really want to get to. Izzy wants to say that I am not criticizing the right and that I have a bias. Well, first of all, I am a conservative Republican political commentator. I have a right-leaning view on many issues, like gun control, like the First Amendment right to free speech. If you don't like that, this isn't the program for you. Second of all, I do address Republicans on a regular basis that I find have violated those rules, like, Mitt Romney, one of those 7 individuals who voted, one of the 7 Republicans that voted for impeachment. And I'm talking about the issue of the impeachment. You took it as me only speaking about the left. That's left and right. I'm talking about 57 people who voted. Notice I didn't say the 57 on the left, the 43 on the right. So, yes, am I talking with broad strokes? I'm also showing you specific events. Now, if you can show me another governor in the United States at this moment that have done what Governor Cuomo did, I will write the same letter about them. By the way, I'm in New York State. My governor is Governor Cuomo. He is a Democrat. I didn't write this because he is a Democrat. I wrote it because he lied to the people. To say that it's only about him being a Democrat, no, it's because he lied to the public. He committed a crime, and that crime was the murder of 15,000 people that didn't need to die. That isn't because he's a Democrat, it's because of what he did. I'm upset with what's going on with Joe Biden because of what he said. Not because he's the Democrat, but because he said this isn't allowed. He said to me and to you that if this happens, he was going to do X. If X happens, he's going to react with Y. Y meaning fire them on the spot instantly. He didn't do it. That means he lied to the American people. I didn't say he did it because he's a Democrat and he's a Republican. I am saying that there seems to be a difference in the rules, that Democrats are allowed to do certain things that Republicans aren't allowed to do. And yes, I can point to the acquittal. I can talk to President Trump that he says the same things that I can point to and show examples of that Democrats have done, and they have different reactions. When I see it on the left, I see it being allowed and absolved. When I see it on the right, I see it demonized. When I see Joe Biden lie directly to the American people, looking us in the face, I see the same kind of reaction I saw when Kirsten Gillibrand did it. That what I'm seeing that Governor Cuomo has done. If you have an example that is equivalent to that, please mention it, and I will be happy to tell you that I agree that they should be, again, term limits and punished according to the law, period. That's not a left or a right thing. I'm trying to use the same rules. I'm trying to use the same set of rules. But it seems these rules vary based on the politics of whoever happens to be saying it, who happens to be in charge at the time. I'm not trying to do that. Now, there's several comments here, and I'm trying to catch up to those comments. And I see a lot of people are talking about BLM, something that we have been talking about for many, many months. And I don't like BLM. I do not agree with BLM. And I'm not demonizing BLM for highlighting, as we have on this channel for months upon months, the many, many flaws, problems, violations of law, violations of ethics that BLM has. So I'm not going to get into that. There's plenty. So I'm not even going to touch that because my comments on BLM, search YouTube, search my websites. We have lots of comments on that, and very specific to the incidents that happen. And again, that's not picking on the left or the right. That's picking on the incident and the groups that are doing it. And if there happens to be a trend, hey, Izzy, guess what? If there's a trend, it's a trend. Izzy mentions, you're upset about COVID deaths in nursing homes, but are also anti-lockdown COVID public safety precautions. No, that's not entirely correct, Izzy, because you have never heard me say, don't wear a mask. You've never heard me say that. You've never heard me say that if you want to have the vaccine, don't do it. You've never heard me say that. That has never been said. In fact, I can show you videos going back to February of 2020, where I was one of the first people talking about how we have to protect each other, that we have to make sure we're going to be okay. In fact, it was back in February where I was talking about, do you notice there's a suicide hotline? There's a domestic abuse hotline. You know who started talking about that? I've been having that on my show, and every week in every video that I do since February, March of 2020. I have never told people not to take care of themselves. So, but if you're asking me, do I think lockdowns are a good thing? No. And you know who else thinks that? The WHO, World Health Organization, the European chief of the WHO has said unequivocally, lockdowns are the worst response to this. That is a fact. We have seen that domestic abuse, suicide, overdoses have all grown, in some cases exponentially, because of the lockdowns and the consequences of that. So, am I in favor of lockdowns? Absolutely not. Do I think you need to have a lockdown to take care of COVID? No, I do not. Does that mean that people shouldn't take precautions? Of course they should. They're not the same thing. No, I didn't say I wasn't biased. I've never said I wasn't biased, Izzy. Of course I am. Every human being is biased. You breathe air, you have a bias. You have a position. If you can think, you have a bias because it is influenced by the way you look at the information. Everyone has a bias. I'm at least honest. You know who isn't honest about it? I'll tell you who's not. Joe Biden isn't honest about his bias. Because he tells us he promises the American people he will do a certain thing, and when he is put to task about that, he doesn't do it. That's a bias. So you want to say, oh, Mike, you have a bias. Of course I do. I'm a conservative Republican commentator. Guess what? That's not a big deal. My resentment for Black Lives is showing. No, my resentment for Black Lives Matter is showing. I do not agree with that organization. Not the statement, because the statement is true. We believe all lives matter. But if you're asking me about the organization, no. Again, you're distracting from, and that was to Philip. I believe you were addressing that to me, but let me be very clear. We're talking about something else. Because I think this is important. Again, we're distracting from, this is important. Yes, TJ Ducklo resigned to take the pressure off, to distract from the fact that the administration, the Biden administration, has failed in its promise, and it has apparently two separate sets of rules. The ones that they are telling the American people to live by, and another set to tell their own people to live by. And they are perfectly happy to live by a separate set of rules. that negatively impacts the lives of various people and businesses as long as they don't get caught. And I see no difference between that and what happened with Governor Cuomo. The only difference there is Governor Cuomo got caught for killing people because no one paid attention beforehand, and Biden at this moment only affected one business and one reporter. But it's the same principle. It's the same way. You start where Biden is now, you get to where Cuomo is. It's a big deal. I mean, I think that makes sense. I think that's very clear. But, maybe it's not. It's kind of like what happened with Gina Carano, where Star Wars decided that because Gina Carano said that using propaganda to turn people against other people, that's the problem. And we have to watch out for that. We have to be aware of that. And that we have to hold our politicians accountable when they do that. And for that, she got punished by Disney. She lost her job and her livelihood was put in danger. Yes, she is now being employed by Ben Shapiro to be able to make movies. Fantastic. I'm happy for her. That doesn't change the fact that she was right with what she said, that's how we have seen 1940s Germany came about because of the propaganda that turned one group of people against another group of people. And she was punished for saying that fact. It's not even a question. It's a fact. That's what happened in 1940s Germany. That's how we saw that government in the 1940s of Germany take power. And for her to say that true statement, she was punished. That's a problem. That's a problem. And if that's happening in our entertainment, and that is very political, then why are we surprised when we see our politicians doing the same thing? One feeds into the other. You don't get Cuomo doing what he's doing, lying to the public, without the entertainment and news media also doing the same thing. Bone Hunter mentioned something I do want to address here. So you skew facts based on your bias, but present it as neutral. One, I didn't say I was neutral. Don't misrepresent my words. Two, I'm not skewing facts. I'm actually showing you the facts that I am speaking about. Did Joe Biden say this? USA Today said yes, he did. Did T.J. Duncan get fired? No, he did not. We know that. CNN said so. Was this something that the Biden administration knew about for weeks? Yes, we know that. CNN and NPR told us that. So, no, I'm not. When I'm bringing up what's going on with Governor Cuomo, it's in the news. I'm showing you the sources. When I say there's a problem with Chuck Schumer and what he said, I'm showing you this is the document from the Supreme Court of the United States. The links will be at the end of this conversation in the description. So, no, don't lie to my viewers and don't hold this opinion yourself. It is factually incorrect. You don't like the fact that I'm showing you facts mostly from left-leaning sources, so you're having to say that it must not be correct. No, it is correct. You don't like it. We have to, we really have to get through this in our society. The fact that you don't like something doesn't change whether or not it's true. I know Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the champion of this idea that her truth is more important than the truth. It's not correct. And if you don't believe me, go back to her 60 Minutes interview when she said that facts are not as important as her moral beliefs. That's her statement, and I'm paraphrasing there. You can go back to that. And Democratic Socialists love that statement. And we've heard constantly hearing from various politicians and elected officials and those who are in positions of power talking about their truth, my truth, his truth, her truth. That isn't truth. Facts are facts. Whether you like them or not is immaterial. And anyone who's going to tell you that they're talking about their truth is telling you that they're willing to put their feelings over the facts, which means they are willing to lie to you. There is no my truth. There is the truth. There is your feeling about the truth, and then there is the truth. You don't have to like how I understand. You don't have to agree with my conclusions. That doesn't change the facts that we are speaking about. You may have a different conclusion based on your feelings. Fantastic, all good. That's why we have this live stream. But that doesn't change the facts as they are. Let's make sure we understand that as we're speaking. So let me move on. What Gina Carano, some people said, so Philip says, and I believe, Philip, you're talking about Gina Carano when she says she's as free to say anything now as she was last week. Carly Farina said herself, no one's got a God-given right to a job. No, they don't. But when we are punishing people for a set of rules and those rules don't apply, that's bias. There are actually laws against that. So that's the same thing as saying, I'm going to fire you because, well, we have what? Rules about being gay, straight, transgender, women, black, Hispanic. We have rules. And I understand there are guidelines. There are even morality clauses in the contracts for most entertainers. Fantastic. But she didn't break them. She got fired because of someone else's political belief. And they punished her in a way they would not punish anyone else, like her co-star, Pedro Pascal, who actually lied about various items, talking about Jews and also using the same analogy. But he was supported in that, and she wasn't, which shows a bias, which now goes into the bias laws. So, I don't recall, Bone Hunter, that Gina Carano said Republicans are being persecuted like Jews. Although, I can understand why she would say that. And she's fine to say that. And that's her perspective. And so what's wrong with that? That's not an evil statement. That's not a bad statement. What's wrong with saying that? I know that Republicans are being persecuted. I'm listening to you guys tell me that I'm soulless. Well, Bone Hunter is telling me that I'm soulless and evil. So, yeah, I'm being persecuted. Some would say that was like the way some members of the news media in 1940s Germany were being persecuted. You can make that analogy. I didn't make it, but you can. And does that change the fact that I'm being persecuted? Anyway. And again, this isn't about me. This isn't about the biases that you guys want to apply in there. Let me try and bring this back again. And again, you're also willing to, you can call in 607-242-1582, as well as the text. But I want to make sure, you're saying, okay, Bone Hunter, you're saying I'm misrepresenting the whole Star Wars thing. No, I'm not. Please tell me, how am I misrepresenting? She put out a tweet. The tweet itself says, and I did an entire video on this, so I want to be very clear. You can see there's 31 minutes and 20 seconds of me going through the whole thing, including showing that exact tweet that she put up and going through exactly what that tweet means, word for word, line by line. So How am I misrepresenting? That's what she said. That's what they did. How is it misrepresenting it? Again, those are facts. No, that's not my feelings about it, Bone Hunter. That's the facts. This is what it says. That is what they did. My feeling about it is I think Disney was wrong. I do not support Disney because of that. That's my feeling on it. But that has nothing to do with this is what Gina Carano said, and that's what Disney did. Hi, Tina. I know that the video is breaking up because Facebook doesn't like it, and they are interrupting our feed. Our signal is going out at over 250% of what is necessary to broadcast on Facebook, so there's not much I can do about that. I believe the feed on YouTube is stronger, but that's the internet overlord saying we don't want to have a conversation. So let's see. No, Mavis, I don't know if they're lonely or not. I don't even want to go down that line. They're trying to, and the reason why I keep going back and answering them is because I'm trying to make sure they understand. This isn't personal. This isn't about me disliking them, but their argument has no substance. And they keep putting in these things. Well, it's all about their emotion, how they feel, but it has nothing, there's no substance behind it. They can't actually say, well, this makes sense. Here are the facts. Bone Hunter is mentioning now as an example. The fact is that she said Republicans are like Jews. So what? I didn't say, no, she didn't say that. I said, so what? I said, I didn't know if she said that because I don't know that she said that. But I'm also saying, so what? Why can't you say that? Of course you can say that. Republicans are like Jews. Okay, someone can say that. And that doesn't qualify as saying I should fire you. That's like me saying that, I don't know, some Democrats are white. Should I be fired? Should I be removed from the airwaves? Is that not a true statement? Some members of Antifa killed innocent Americans. That is a fact. Should I be fired? Should I be removed from the airwaves? Should I be blocked forever? That's a problem. We mean that's the whole incident. The incident wasn't, yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, it's the incident. She said that and she got fired for it. And there's really no justification for that. That is a bias. That is a reaction of emotion against law, violating her contract, to the best of my knowledge. There's nothing dodging about it. You don't like that I'm saying it, that I'm bringing it up. That doesn't change what it is. Yes, millions of people died. And some Republicans have died. Again, I'm not saying that it's the best equivalent ever, but so what? Well, now it goes back to, now you have nothing but personal attacks. Okay. Again, you know, I try and address what you're saying, but, you know, just because I'm not going to agree with you doesn't make me a liar or spineless. It just makes you very emotional, and you're, I don't know, lost in your emotion. And that's fine, you know, you can be, but that doesn't change or affect anything about me. And if you don't, and if you truly believe that I'm a liar and I'm spineless, leave. I say that about anyone. No one's forced to watch this program. If you truly believe I am that evil of a person, go away. Do your own show. Say whatever you want to. That's called freedom. That's the First Amendment. And if, you know, the internet overlords were fair, you should be able to do it as well as I do. Or maybe not. But you're not going to get me scared and make me run away. In fact, I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences of what we're seeing now. Because, like with Gina Carano, we're seeing something that I've talked about in the past, which is the Confucius Institute, about Chinese communism coming into our colleges. Something that has been a big question, that has been investigated by the Department of Justice, has been in congressional investigations for many years now. We have actual liberal professors at colleges throughout the United States and the world who have been bringing up the question of the Confucius Institutes, and that this is a problem. In fact, it was the same time that Eric Swalwell went to the University of Maryland at the college campus, College Park campus, was the same year in the same location that the Chinese government, the Communist Chinese Party, opened up a Confucius Institute at the University of Maryland. And that institute has been identified across the world and at many universities in the United States as being a communist hotbed. It's a spy hub that they are able to have their agents infiltrate communities, universities, and to ingratiate themselves with businesses and politicians through the Confucius Institutes and their influence on college students. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. And in the United States, that problem was being addressed under several programs, including the China Task Force and their final report in November 6th of 2020. And by the way, for those on the left, there's something that's very important. There's the highlight their problems that the Confucius Institute was helping to hide the environmental destruction from China, which is the world's largest carbon emitter. In this program, you can see this was done, and this is the China Task Force report. And the United States government was beginning to put together legislation based on that. And then Joe Biden goes ahead and he actually got rid of it. Did a total 180 and enabled China to go ahead and have the Confucius Institutes across the United States. I find that to be troubling. I find that to be a big problem, a really big problem. Roy mentions Gina's last sentence. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Expresses her sentiment, not saying Republicans are Jews. I know, Roy. No, there is no difference. There is no difference because that same logic has been used to go against people who are gay, people who are black, who are white, who are trans, people who are... we've heard people say that we hate you because you are different, because you are not approved, because you are outside the norm through history. And it's always the same process. You can't say that. You can't do that. We're going to punish you because you don't agree. Read the book, 1984. It's a great example of that. Now, John Solek mentions that except in Binghamton, our spies are different. Actually, our spies are the Confucius Institute. And to give you an example, the Binghamton University receives over $200,000 and has, I believe, over 12 people who are associated with the Confucius Institute at Binghamton University at this moment. And that they have renewed a contract with them, even as the Department of Justice has said that this is a spy hub and that this is detrimental to the safety and well-being of the United States as well as our students. That troubles me. And Joe Biden just said, don't worry about it. It's okay. China's good. That China can have these institutes and they can influence our schools, they can influence our businesses, they can influence our students and our politicians and turn them against America and our government. and it's okay. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't see how that's a positive thing. I believe, John, you agree with me that this is a problem. I think many of us should think, and we have to look at this and say, wait a minute, why is the White House doing this? Why is the White House turning around, as reported by the Washington Examiner, even though we have a Senate subcommittee that has gone through a 109-page bipartisan report identifying that these countries are trying to seek to exploit America's openness to advance their own national interests. That China is the leader of this, and the Biden administration is perfectly okay with that. I have a problem with that. This is the same Biden administration that is willing to reverse its position and to violate its promises to the American people. They're willing to lie to the American people. And at the same time that they're willing to lie to the American people, they're out there and they're willing to empower foreign governments that want to seek to destroy America, that want to destroy the American way of life. And that is the statement of China. China wants America gone. China wants to rule the world. They want to be the greatest power in the world. That is a statement of the CCP. In fact, that is the definition of the communist ideology. Read Karl Marx. Communism has to be worldwide. China is looking for a worldwide Chinese communist government. That is, by definition, the goal of their government. And Joe Biden is saying, go for it. Use the United States as one of your nesting grounds. I am troubled by that, deeply troubled by that. John Solek mentions Binghamton University harbors spies under the guise of being international students. That is one of the allegations against the Confucius Institute, that they have teachers, instructors, and students that come in under that program, and they are in fact spies, like they went into the University of Maryland. And we know that in the University of Maryland, at the same time, that may have been, we believe it could be, where Eric Swalwell was first introduced to the communist spies that would later run in his campaign and help to influence him as he became part of the House Intelligence Committee, potentially feeding information to China. Yeah, Roy, as I just mentioned, this is the problem with it. The Confucius Institute puts spies in. Now, if we know the Confucius Institute, according to multiple countries around the world and our own government, have said that this is a place where they are inputting spies and infiltrating different parts of our government and business. And we know that Eric Swalwell is there. And we see that Eric Swalwell is later caught with spies who he was having debatably rather intimate relations with, at the same time that he's on the Intelligence Committee, and he has additional spies, by the way, it's not the same one, additional spies that are working on his campaign. And we have additional spies that are working with Dianne Feinstein. And for those who are wondering about what's going on the right, where are they? I don't know any Republicans that have Chinese spies working in their campaigns. If there are, please tell me. I want to denounce that too, but I'm not aware of it. But I see this is all connected with the Confucius Institute, and the Confucius Institute is something that we're seeing Joe Biden support. Does that make sense? Why would we help to create a group that is working to destroy our nation? Izzy mentions the question, and America doesn't. I assume you mean we don't have spies. We may well do. And, that's my country. And as far as I know, I do not know of an international coalition that has stated around the world that America has this one agency that is being used as a spy hub at colleges. Please show me that article, because it doesn't exist. We do have that for the Confucius Institute. We do have that with communist China around the world. We don't have that with America. Doesn't exist. So, I mean, let's be fair. You're raising an argument that doesn't have any credibility. Nor does it address the problem at hand, which is that Joe Biden, through his actions, he's acting in a way opposite to what he told the American public. That he wanted to unify America. America is not communist. You can't unify us under communists. He said that he's going to protect America from Chinese interests and to support our nation and defend it, even though he's supporting Chinese coming into our nation and undermining us. He has told us that he has a set of rules that he and his people will operate under, and he doesn't enforce it. What is going on? There is a problem there. And that problem, again, brings me right back in. I haven't even, yeah, you're right, Roy. There's a whole thing about the fact that Hunter Biden, his son, is trading on Joe Biden's name and political influence to make tens of millions of dollars and to weaken America through that process. That's a whole other thing. And again, this brings me back to how we got to here and started off the show with Andrew Cuomo and the politicians, the Democrats in the United States who have not addressed, or the ones in New York State, who have not denounced what he has done, which is absolutely, he has lied to American people. He has been corrupt. He has committed crimes. He should be denounced by every Democrat and every Republican, every Libertarian, and every conservative. It is universal. There is no question that he committed these crimes and the corruption that he created. And that corruption gets worse when we don't address it. It starts off with something very, very simple. Like, hey, like we saw here, where we have one of his people attack someone in a manner he said absolutely not to do, and then he does not react. He lets it go until they get caught. The corruption grows. If you're allowing something to fester and to become wrong until you get caught, that means there's a big problem there. I mean, does that not make sense? I'm seriously, I'm asking, doesn't that make sense? Because it makes sense to me. Let's see. Roy mentions that I'm buffering. Again, the internet overlords do not like these kind of conversations because, again, I'm asking questions, I'm trying to draw conclusions, and I'm giving you the facts on which I am building that. You may not agree with my conclusion, which is perfectly your right. That doesn't change the facts that exist, and those facts are being suppressed. We are having people who are trying to distract us in New York State. Ooh, look, you can open your business for an extra hour. Don't talk about the crime that Governor Cuomo has committed. Let it go. We're watching, don't talk about the fact that there was sexual abuse by the Biden administration that was allowed to exist and would have continued without question if it were not for the fact that it was called out and made public. And only after it got made public did they do the least possible kind of corrective action. And then the political heat kept up, and that's when someone finally got fired. You know, this is a problem. Izzy brings up an interesting point. China wants to rule the world. What do you call American imperialism and America and military bases around the globe? I see that enabling democracy because we don't control China. We don't control, name the countries that we control, because I can tell you, Germany, England, Zimbabwe, Peru. We don't control those countries. We don't control them. We don't want them to be America. We're not trying to add them to us. In fact, when we went out and fought a war, several wars, in Iraq, as an example, we had troops, we lost lives. We never asked them to become a colony of America. Not the same thing. So you want to tell me about American imperialism? And let me also add in, on a purely partisan, purely emotional level, I'm not upset with American imperialism. Let's see, that has American imperialism, as you want to call it, which would just be the American Revolution, Industrial Revolution as well. We've raised more people out of poverty than anything else in the history of mankind, period. That is a fact, absolute, indisputable. We have, through America being a leader of the world, created more opportunities for more people to live better lives of higher quality than ever in the existence of mankind. We have more transfer of knowledge and the ability to know more information than the entire Library of Alexandria than ever before in the history of mankind, and that's because of America. You know what? I can live with that. I'm not upset with that. I don't have a problem with that. We have a system of law that we would like to see other places in the world have, where people are able to have free speech. How dare we try and impose or encourage countries to allow women to go and vote? How dare we tell people that you have a right to speak about your government and say that they're not good, and that there should be a way to improve it, and that you are involved and you are essential as a human being, essential in that government's growth. Yeah, I'm opposed to that. I think that's a terrible idea. No, I support that wholeheartedly. You don't have to, but I don't see that's a problem. So, is that a bias? Absolutely. Is it my bias? Absolutely. You don't have to agree with it. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. No, John. By the way, John, you mentioned about Barbara Scarlett, the legal counsel for Binghamton University, and she had said something about Confucius Institute. I'm not familiar with that statement. But again, I have a problem with that. It is a troubling, troubling fact. You know what's also troubling to me? For those who are, I don't know how many people who are watching this support the Second Amendment, that are gun owners or know of gun owners or just support the Second Amendment. But I think it should be very troubling because this is from the White House. Again, look at me. I'm showing you facts. So let's look at the fact. The White House, on their press briefing on February 11th, 3 days ago, are highlighting and spent the first third of their press briefing talking about gun violence, okay, and preventing gun violence. They received exactly one question from the news media. Even though they're massively talking about gun control, how they want to remove the ability of American people from living their Second Amendment right to be able to defend themselves and their families, their property, from people who would kill them, including the government. And there's only one question from the news media about that. Does that make sense to anyone? You don't have to think I'm right. You don't have to say it's perfect. In fact, even if you want to say, well, you know, you hate the Second Amendment. If you are one of those people who hate the Second Amendment, you think that guns are inherently evil, this inanimate object that is sitting wherever it is absolutely the definition of evil. Let's say you believe that thought. The President of the United States has his press secretary spend a third of their briefing saying that they want to enact laws about the very same issue that you are concerned about, and if you are against the Second Amendment, he's saying that he's going to support your point of view, and no one talks about it. No one asked a question. Well, correction. One question was asked about when this is going to be going forward. That's the only thing that they had to say about it. Just that one question. And that seriously concerns me. That the news media, on an absolutely critical question of our country, a bedrock foundational question. The two foundations of the United States would definitely be the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. The First Amendment, which has our rights, our freedom, our ability to think and to express ourselves, and our ability to defend ourselves because we have expressed ourselves. These are two fundamental parts of America and fundamental parts of life in the world. And the collected news media, mainstream news media, couldn't come up with more than one question about that, about this absolutely fundamental right. Something is wrong with our government. Something is wrong with this process where we are empowering people like Governor Cuomo so that they are able to kill tens of thousands of individuals and to lie about it and to expect to be bulletproof from any kind of prosecution or trouble for having been caught being lying to us. We have individuals at the highest levels of our government who are telling us, here are a set of rules. This is the guideline. This is the game plan. This is how we're going to play the game. And they break that and expect no consequences whatsoever. And at the same time, they're saying we're going to mess with one of the fundamental, foundational bedrocks of our nation. And the news media goes, well, hey, let's talk about something completely different. Let's talk about whether or not we're going to extend one more hour of being open for small businesses under coronavirus, or whether or not you need a second mask. Izzy mentions, look at me, I'm so smart and sophisticated, but only present half a story to it. No, Izzy, I'm not adding half a story. I'm giving you the facts. Thank you for considering that I'm smart, Izzy. I take that as a compliment. You think I'm sophisticated. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. You think I'm presenting half the story. I'm showing you the news report. This is from the White House itself. They got one question on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is a foundational document of the United States. It is the bedrock of our country. And you think that it's telling half the story by saying there's only one question on it? I didn't even tell you what the question was. Because quite honestly, it doesn't matter what the question was. How can I put this? I don't know what you do for a living. It doesn't matter what anyone does. But imagine that you're doing whatever it is you do, and someone says, I am going to foundationally change your job. Let me try and think of something. You're the fry guy at McDonald's, and you are the best damn fry guy ever in existence. This is what you do. You're great at it. And one day, McDonald's comes up and says, by the way, we're going to change. You're no longer going to use oil to fry the fries. You're using orange juice. And they walk away. And you don't ask a question about it. You're just like, okay, I'm using orange juice now to fry the fries, which has fundamentally destroyed my job and my ability to live my life. Because you're going to get fired because you can't make fries anymore. You no longer make good fries. Wouldn't you want to ask a question? Wouldn't you want your boss, somebody, to stand up and go, hey, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe we shouldn't use orange juice to make French fries. Now, am I making this, is this a silly example of it? Absolutely it is. And yet it is the same thing. This is foundational. And we have a news media that is supposed to be looking out for you and me, for the American public, and they can't be bothered to spend more time than asking one question. One question? When the White House spent fully a third of their press briefing talking about this issue. The White House thinks it's important. The news media could care less. I don't think that's telling you half the story. That is the story. It doesn't matter if you're for the Second Amendment or against the Second Amendment. You should be able to ask more than one question about it. Am I wrong here? Does that not make sense to anyone? And I know some people will say, yes, it makes sense, Mike, I agree with you. But there are people who are opposed to this, and they're going to tell me, like Izzy is right now, well, you're not telling the whole story. That is the story. Why are they not addressing this? Why are they not dealing with it? This is fundamental to our nation. Forget that we deserve it. It's an obligation to give us more than one question about fundamentally changing our lives. I can't think of anything. If I told you that, well, actually, the government is telling us that we must have electric cars. There were more questions about that. No one just said, oh, well, here's one question on that, and let's move on to the next thing. No, we're going to fundamentally change the way people live their lives with cars and with gasoline and with oil. And there are questions. I'm selective, Izzy? You mean to tell me that I can tell you I can fundamentally change your life and you wouldn't ask a question about it? Does that make sense at all? If I'm going to change the way that you fundamentally make money, that you live your life, and you're going to tell me that you're going to have no questions at all, and you think that's selective? Well, yes, Roy, I believe they are pre-approving it. I do believe that they are against the Second Amendment. And I think that's very clear in a lot of the news media out there. But I think it's important for people to be aware that they are being misled, that they are being, there's a lot of obfuscation, that there's a smokescreen up in front of you and saying, oh, see, don't worry, it's all okay. We're on the job, sort of. But we're just not on your side of the job. We're not even on anyone's side. We're not doing the job. But there's no one there to call them out. And when we don't call out these little things, when we don't ask these questions, these small questions, they build up, and that leads us to Governor Cuomo killing 15,000 people. That leads us to a corrupt government. That leads us to a government where the Biden administration has two different sets of rules. And we only find out about it when they get caught. Does it not make sense? These are connected. The corruption is connected. Whether it's the root of it is sexism, or the root of it is politics, or something else altogether, they're all connected. And having different rules for different people doesn't make it better. Gina Carano can't say this, but Pedro Pascal can. Chuck Schumer can say this, but President Trump can't. That's not unifying people. Enrique, you're telling me that you think I went on a big stretch. Perhaps I am. But tell me, why? What did I say that in that just then? What didn't make sense about that? Is there a difference between not asking questions and not giving people information, not letting them know? In fact, not even trying to question the leadership and corruption from that leadership. Because I see them as being connected. I see them being the same thing. If I'm not willing to question the leadership, Whether I agree or disagree doesn't matter. But if I am unwilling to question that leadership about the actions that they are taking, especially when those actions they are taking are obviously in conflict and juxtaposed against what they have just told me previously, if their actions aren't matching their words and I am not asking them questions about it or fundamental facts of what they're talking about, then I believe that leads to corruption. Now, you can tell me, Mike, that's too much of a leap. It doesn't make sense. And that's fine. You can say that. And you can tell me, Mike, you're not understanding. Okay, then please explain it to me. Because I think that does make sense. I think that does connect. And I think you can draw that line where if we have a news media whose purpose is to question the government on behalf of the American people, whether the American people like it or not, but to ask the questions and to clarify what are the rules, what are the guidelines we're supposed to be going by. And if we don't do that, and we have seen consistently when we don't do that, that every single time it leads to some form of corruption, and that corruption can be as extreme as the death of individuals in our nation. I see that as being connected. Mavis mentions leftists just do what they're told. They don't want to live their own lives. They want government to live for them. Well, to be fair, that's a little bit more extreme. If socialists and communists believe that government ultimately is the most powerful thing and is the best thing, I mean, that's the structure. Government is universal. Government is involved in every aspect of your life. Government is always right. But government is made up of human beings, and government is always wrong. Look at any time, take a picture, a snapshot of any time in history at any government anywhere in the world, and you will find that it's almost always wrong. Because governments are people. A bunch of people who make bad decisions. It happens. Sometimes they make good ones. Usually, a lot of times they make bad ones. And governments, because of politics, tend to make more bad ones than good ones overall. But the more free a system is, the more input that the people have in that system, the more they tend to make better decisions for that government. That's what I believe. Leftists don't agree with that. Oh, Enrique's talking about the orange juice. Yeah, McDonald's making fries with orange juice. Like I said, it's a silly example. And it's over the top. Absolutely. You're right, Enrique. I'm over the top with that one. But yet, I can't think of a better way to make it more clear in like zero time. Everyone can envision the fry guy. No question. And we know that you make the fries with the oil. Everyone has been in the McDonald's. Everyone can envision that. It is it's pretty much universal. And I'm talking about, let's fundamentally, this is what the Biden administration has just said. We're going to fundamentally change everything. And I cannot make it more clear than saying to that fry guy, you're going to make fries with orange juice. That is the kind of fundamental change I'm talking. This is what Biden is talking about. You may like it. You may disagree with it. That's a separate question. I didn't say you have to agree. I'm saying we have to be aware that our news media is not asking about it. They're not even bothering to think about it. It went by with almost barely a blink of an eye. That's how little they cared about it. They didn't care that someone's that fundamentally changing your life. I know you can't make fries and orange juice. By the way, same thing with the analogy. You can't take away the Second Amendment and have America function properly. No, the analogy, I made that analogy for a reason. It was off the top of my head, but it fits. You take away this Second Amendment from America, you remove one of the foundations of America, and America will not function. We will fail as a nation. There are groups out there, like Communist China, that would love to see that happen. I don't agree with them. But that is one of the things we have to keep in mind. Wow. This has got to be a good show because so far we have been redlined by, I believe it's Facebook, for pretty much the entire 2 hours and 5 minutes that we've been speaking. They really don't like us talking about this. Talking about the corruption of government, the failure of the news media, the duplicity of some members of our government, in particular Joe Biden and his administration. They don't like us talking about that. They don't like us talking about Governor Cuomo and the fact that he's killed people and has lied about it. They don't want us to talk about Disney and how it has woefully and willfully used its immense power to try and destroy someone's life because they didn't agree. For no reason. Seems the internet overlords don't like what I'm saying. And that's okay. Because it's called the First Amendment. And they're not going to stop me from saying it. Let me ask you folks. And by the way, I love and appreciate the fact that every week you guys come in, you talk with me. This is about you. It's a live stream. It's about talking to you so that you can tell us what you think, whether you think I'm right, I'm wrong. I'm not upset with anyone telling me I'm wrong. That's fine. I was upset that someone was telling me that I'm soulless because that's just silly. And that advances nothing. That's not beneficial. But disagreement is good. Having a conversation is good on the serious issues and the not so serious issues. And that's what this is about. Freedom of speech. Every week, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking about freedom of speech. We talk to people, and we have our audience that is in Great Britain, Germany, Peru, Canada. These are the ones that I know of directly that have spoken with us on this channel repeatedly and telling us about how things are happening there. And I want to hear from them, please. And if you missed the show, always remember, you can write in the comments. I follow the comments. And please tell us what you think. You got this part right. You got that part right. If you think the orange juice analogy was too much, like Enrique did, tell me. That's perfectly fine. But we need to have that conversation. And by the way, this conversation grows and more people get involved, and we are able to make more change if you subscribe. So please do subscribe. It's been 2 hours. I haven't mentioned it once, but please do subscribe to the channel if you want to have more free speech, because that's what we're fighting for here. This is what this is about. Enrique mentions, just because you pour syrup on a caca, don't make it pancakes. Yeah, that's true. You're right. Hey, you think it's a bad analogy? That's fine. But again, we need to have these conversations, because when we don't have these conversations, I truly, truly believe that allows things like what we saw with Governor Cuomo to happen over and over again. He isn't able to lie to us, to have a cover-up like Secretary Missile DeRosa directly stated to members of the Democratic Party. They can't do it if we're not talking about it. If we are talking about it, if we are making our voices heard and our elected officials are doing their job, which is to hold people responsible, to listen to what we're saying and to act on it, then we have a good government. And when they don't, that's what term limits are for. Poppy mentions, corruption will never truly be exposed and changed if the media is complicit in it. Media's job is to dig for truth and to report it. That is supposed to be their job. And when the major media isn't doing it, that's why we have social media individuals like Tim Pool, people like oh God, suddenly I have a flood of people. Joe Rogan, Crowder, Steven Crowder, who's done some great work. There's actually a huge list of people who've been doing fantastic jobs. I'd like to say I'm part of it, but maybe I'm a small part of it, at least at the moment. We are growing, but that's what we're here for, because the media